But you describe the kind of journey you've been on from being sort of less emotionally available to kind of a cracking open period.
Right.
Have you had people in your life that have been especially beautiful models of how to like get in and foster that kind of intimacy?
It's, we writers, we work out our stuff in public. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite phrases is, what writers do is they tell other beggars where they found bread. And so, I think there was a certain point where I just realized being emotionally closed off was bad for my relationships, bad for my personal happiness, and bad. If you protect yourself too much from the world, then you can't be affected by all the joy and holiness the world has to offer. And so I felt the need to really explore emotion. Really, it started. So I did what any University of Chicago graduate would do: is I called neuroscientists and asked them about emotion. I wrote a book about emotion. But it kind of worked. I think it did. And then life happens, parenting.
Yeah.
Bad things happen. I've had some professional humiliations. And then went through a divorce. And that was like an emotionally searing phase. And it was about 10 years ago, 2013.
Yeah.
And I was intensely lonely. And I realized I had a lot of work friends, like people I could have lunch with and talk politics, but I didn't have weekend friends. And if it was up to me to call somebody in a crisis, who would I call? And so that was a period of pretty intense loneliness, which manifested sort of as a burning in the stomach.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But so I
always feel heart prickly.
Really?
Yours is in your stomach.
Mine is in my stomach. Everything,
Yeah.
Everything for me is in my stomach. That's like hot dogs. And so, but what I learned was, when you're in the valley like that, you can't pull yourself out.
Yeah.
Somebody has to do it.
Yeah.
And so I got a lucky break. I got invited to this couple's home in D.C. And I was accepting all invitations in those days. And
that's really cute. Great. When? Super now?
Right,
awesome. See you for.
I'm free the next 7 nights. I'm good. And so they had a kid in the D.C. public schools, and that their son had a friend named James, whose mom had some health issues and drug issues, and couldn't always feed James. So they said, well, James can stay with us. And so, but then James had a friend, and that kid had a friend. So by the time I'm invited over there are 15 mattresses on the basement floor, and there were about 40 kids around the table.
Yeah.
And so they were, they're in between the ages in those days, between maybe 16 and 20 or so, 15 and 20. And so I walk in, there's this kid who greets me in the doorway, and I reach out to shake his hand. I'm David. He says, well, I'm Ed, but we're not allowed to shake hands here. We just hug here. And I'm like, not the huggiest guy on the face of the earth, but hugged. But they come to mind as someone who helped me.
Yeah.
Because their great skill was emotional openness. They beamed love at you, and they demanded that you beam it back. And so Mr. had to be a little more open.
Yeah.
And so I think that evolved. And so I was willing to tried to be a little braver.
Yeah. It's funny too, the relation. I've heard a lot from people when they're like in the valley moment, that one of the factors that pulled them up was, it seems counterintuitive, because you think, well, this is the time in which I need to receive.
Right.
But actually it was in
Absolutely.
giving, which
Absolutely.
That's a strange alchemy.
Yeah, but it definitely works.
Why does it work?
Because we don't love each other. We love each other when we see ourselves doing lovely things, or love ourselves when we see ourselves. There's this saying, I have to love myself first before I can love others. I think that's backwards. That we have to see ourselves loving.
Love you in order
and then
to...
what feels better than
Yeah.
generative care to somebody?
Yeah.
And I guess to the extent that we were doing things for each other, it felt like I was the mature grown-up buying these kids endless bikes and stuff like that. But they really, we were in it together. I was in a low moment. They were all going through their challenges.
Yeah.
And I think it was because it was low moments. You just have to be vulnerable. Like there is an absolute need to reach out there.
Yeah.
You quote Paul Tillich, that he has this line that moments of suffering interrupt your life and remind you you're not the person you thought you were. They carve through the floor of what you thought was the basement of your soul and reveal a cavity below. And then they carve through a floor and reveal a cavity below. And so in those moments, you're aware of depths of yourself.
Yeah.
And you realize that only emotional and spiritual food will fill those depths.
Yes.
And so you're open. And I used to have back in my Valley days these deep spiritual experiences.
Yeah.
Now that I'm happy, I have fewer of them. But I don't know if I'd make the trade. I think I would make the trade, rather be joyful.
Your wife, Anne, is really good at what we're describing.
She is.
She's... Anne is, like, really lovely in the way that she kind of expects every person in front of her to be poetry. Like, that's how she treats them.
Yeah, that's
She
well put.
imagines beauty, and then I think that gets reflected back
Yeah.
to her.
The phrase everyone uses about her is incandescent. So there's a light there.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned from her is that we think the most important part of getting to know a person is conversation.
Yeah.
And that is to be a good conversationalist is super essential. But before you get to that,
Yeah.
you have to be really good at gazing at the person. You have to bring the right kind of attention.
Mm-hmm.
If I bring a cold or objective attention to you, you'll feel cold and objective.
Yeah.
But if I bring a warm and loving attention, you will bloom. And so the story I tell is I was in Waco, Texas, and I'm meeting this woman named LaRue Dorsey, who was a teacher, a strict disciplinarian. I'm having breakfast with her at a diner in Waco. And she presented herself to me as a strict disciplinarian. She's like, I loved my students enough to discipline them. And it was like, boom. Mm-hmm. And then this mutual friend of ours walks into the diner named Jimmy Durrell. And Jimmy's a pastor, wonderful guy, teddy bearish guy, about 60-something. And he, the homeless wouldn't come to his church, so he built a church under the highway overpass called Church Under the Bridge, where the homeless were. He is a homeless shelter. He really is a beautiful, beautiful human being. So he goes up to us, and he goes up and grabs Mrs. Dorsey by the shoulders, shakes her, way harder than you should shake a 93-year-old, and says, Mrs. Dorsey, you're the best, I love you, I love you. And this strict disciplinarian turns into a 9-year-old girl with just bright eyes. And so the moral of the story is pay attention to people more like Jimmy and less like me. But the one point is he's a more valuable personality than I have. But I think the deeper point, and I'm going to say this for people who have faith and people who don't have faith. So Jimmy's a pastor. And so Jimmy's, when he sees somebody, I hope, he sees someone made in the image of God. Mm-hmm. And when he looks at them, he's looking a little into the face of God. He's looking at somebody with an immortal soul of infinite value and dignity. He's looking at somebody so important that Jesus was willing to die for them. And you can believe Christian, Jew, Muslim, atheist, but having that kind of respect for a person and conveying that kind of respect with your eyes is an absolute prerequisite for getting to know somebody. Because when we meet a stranger, they're asking, am I of value to you?
Yeah.
Am I a priority here?
Yeah, that's right.
And those questions are answered with the eyes, not with the mouth. And so I think when Anne, she just carries that out there. So with her eyes in a nanosecond, you think, okay,
I'm an important person.
I'm an important person. Yeah, I'm valued.
Exactly.